Today is Friday, March 6th, 1964, and jurors are going to watch a historic motion picture film. We learn about Ruby's children, and, well, Dallas just can't win. Day 3 is in the history books. I'm Eric Bushman.
And I'm Brandon Birmingham. This is the state of Texas versus Jack Ruby, the original trial of the century. Today at the Dallas County Criminal Courts building, the first murder in the history of the world caught on live television was shown to jurors in the Jack Ruby trial. District Attorney Henry Wade showed the 8 men and 4 women 2 motion picture films of the events that took place at City Hall on the 24th of November last year. The first film was taken by the United Press International, the second by George Pinnock at KRLD. The presentation of the films includes some slow frames, too. DPD Officer Jack Revel identified from the films the members of the press, the Dallas Police Department, Lee Harvey Oswald, and the balding slayer currently on trial, Jack Ruby. Jim Underwood, a KRLD photographer, ran the projector.
During the dramatic presentation, the lights in the courtroom were dimmed. Lieutenant Jack Revel supplied a running commentary of the images, sometimes using a ruler to point out various figures in the basement of City Hall during the killing of Lee Harvey Oswald. Said Lieutenant Revel, "Now we see Detective Lavelle, handcuffed to Oswald, and now more of Ruby's hat. Now Oswald is in the frame. Here we see Ruby moving toward Lavelle. Oswald, and Graves, who is also guarding the Marxist. Spectators could not see Ruby actually fire the shot, but they could get a glimpse of Oswald slumping toward the floor. And then Bedlam. Judge Joe Brown denied Chief Defense Attorney Melvin Belli's request to allow jurors to ask questions while the motion picture films were displayed.
Ruby chewed gum and appeared tense as the pictures flickered on a screen within 10 feet of his chair. He gnawed at his nails, fidgeted in his chair, and rubbed his chin. Ruby kept his eyes fixed on the screen during the first showing of the motion picture films, but when they were rerun for the jury, Ruby frequently looked down and closed his eyes.
After the motion picture films were shown, 2 police officers told jurors the statements they say they heard Jack Ruby make after the killing in the basement of City Hall. Glenn King, a captain with Dallas Police Department, told jurors that no more than a minute or so after the shooting, Ruby said, "You didn't think I was going to let him get by with it, did you?" The statement was made, according to the captain, as Ruby was being led into the elevator. When asked by District Attorney Henry Wade if he said anything to Ruby, Captain King said to Ruby, "You dirty scum. You're the scum of the earth." The testimony brought the lawyers from both sides out of their chairs in a slew of objections. However, Judge Brown ultimately allowed Captain King to testify about all of the statements he either heard or made in the bedlam following the killing.
Judge Brown also allowed into evidence notes that Officer Archer and McMillan made in the days immediately following Oswald's murder. Jurors will be allowed to compare what these officers wrote with what they heard these officers say yesterday in court. Ruby's lawyers, Melvin Belli and Joe Tannehill, have intimated on numerous occasions through their questioning that the officers added the statements they attribute to Ruby, for example, that Ruby said he intended to shoot him 3 times, or that Ruby said, "I meant to kill him." Belli contends that since neither of these quotes appear in the original notes made back in November, that the officers made them up before trial.
We now know what Dallas police found when they searched Jack Ruby. Captain Dean also told jurors about the amount of money Jack Ruby possessed at his apartment and in his car, as well as the amount of money he had in his pockets when he killed the alleged presidential assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. Police found a total of $837.50 at his apartment and in his car. When he was searched at the jail, Ruby possessed $2,015.33 in cash. In addition to the cash in his pocket, police recovered 3 photographs of a sign in town that said, "Impeach Earl Warren." Earl Warren is Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States.
After Captain King testified, the prosecution called its 18th and final witness in their case, Dallas police officer Patrick Dean, a sergeant in the patrol division. 2 days after Ruby shot and killed Oswald, Sergeant Dean asked him, "Jack, why'd you do it?" Dean said Ruby replied that he was emotionally shaken since the assassination of the president and the shooting of Officer J.D. Tippit. Further, Ruby said he could see no sense in a long and lengthy trial for the presidential assassin. Finally, Ruby said he didn't want Jacqueline Kennedy to have the emotional strain of a trial either. And then, according to Sergeant Dean, Ruby gave a reason why he killed Oswald. Quote, "I guess I wanted to let the world know that Jews have guts." And perhaps the most devastating to the defense of temporary insanity came next. Dean quoted Ruby as saying he first thought about killing Oswald on November 22nd, 2 days before he actually did kill him. Dean said, Ruby said that when he noticed the sarcastic sneer on Oswald's face, that's when he decided to kill him. The damaging testimony brought lawyers Belli Tonnahill and Phil Burleson all out of their chairs. In what will most assuredly be a point raised on appeal, they claim that since all of those statements were allegedly made in response to questioning and not spontaneously, the statements are inadmissible. Judge Brown disagreed and let the jurors hear all of these statements. This will be a major point on appeal, judging by the reactions of the lawyers. Sergeant Dean was one of the first members of the Dallas Police Department questioned by reporters after Oswald was killed. In this audio clip, Dean is questioned by Bob Huffaker of KRLD-TV and Tom Pettit of NBC within 15 minutes of Oswald's being shot as chaos continued to unfold in the basement of the Dallas Police headquarters.
We have a further report.
Now then, thus far, Pat, is the man upstairs in the cell?
As far as I know, he's either in the jail or at Captain Fritz's office.
Give
I
up?
imagine he would probably be in jail.
Do you know this subject? Do you know him? Have you seen him before?
Yes, I do.
Is he from Dallas?
Yes.
He is.
I couldn't tell you.
I know you can't release the name now, but do you know what kind of business he happens to be in?
Bob, I wouldn't want to say.
Right.
Did he have to be disarmed or did he give up?
We had to disarm him.
Did he struggle?
As much as he could, yes, but he was.
Say anything?
The struggle.
He was mumbling. I couldn't hear. I couldn't understand what he did say.
Now, do you know?
Did Oswald say anything?
No, Oswald didn't. What? Now,
Yes.
do you
it
know
was a
what
pistol.
kind of pistol he was
No,
carrying?
Bob, I never saw the pistol itself. Some other, I think, Officer Grace had got the gun immediately after he fired the shot. Officer
He was in his civilian clothes.
Yes.
Did he try to get away?
No, he was immediately subdued by the
Well,
officers.
he wouldn't have had a chance to get
No.
away.
How many shots were fired?
Just one
One.
shot.
Did
What
you
was
see?
Oswald wearing? Do you remember when he came out?
I didn't pay too much attention.
Did you know the man? Did you see the man before?
Yes, he did.
Sir,
Did
yes.
you?
you saw his face
Yes, sir.
and you knew him?
Yes, sir.
Pat, he is a resident of Dallas. Is he not?
Yes, sir. And that's all I'd want to say about the man inside. This is Officer P.T. Dean of the Dallas Police Department.
It looked like that about Johnson.
Questioning
About 3
Officer
feet
Patrick
away,
Dean of the Dallas
or how
Police
far would you
Department.
say the shot was fired?
I couldn't tell. I couldn't see Oswald when the shot was fired. I immediately turned. I was waiting at the armored car to ride with the suspect to the county jail. As soon as the shot was fired, I came immediately down the ramp to assist the officers.
Officer, do you know this man personally that's in custody?
Yes.
In the line of duty or in another way?
Sir, I wouldn't want to say.
But he is known to you as a police officer.
As a police officer,
That is, you as a police
I see.
officer know him, is that correct?
yes.
Was he connected in any way with this?
I wouldn't. I don't know.
Had you seen him here in the building before the shot was fired?
No, sir.
Pat, could you outline briefly some of the security precautions that were taken immediately before this happened?
Yes, sir. We thoroughly searched the basement. We had searched even the cars up on top of the pipes and things that a person might conceal himself. There was about 15 to 20 men that had searched this place prior to 30 minutes. In fact, searched it twice, about an hour before and then 30 minutes before.
How many officers did you have outside, approximately, would you say?
About 20
About
uniformed
20
officers.
outside the building, and they are armed with riot guns, pistols, and all kinds of stuff.
Yes, sir. Some few of them are.
And you were then ready.
before in here?
No, sir.
You hadn't.
Today, no, sir.
Not today. Is there anything else that you possibly might tell us about him, Pat? I know that at the present time you're bound and can't say very much, but you have said that he is from Dallas and that you do know this subject and have seen him before.
Yes, sir. I do know.
Is there anything that you can say about him further than the fact that he is a resident of Dallas, the man who shot Oswald, to shed some more light on it?
Well, Bob, that would be all I'd want to say, really.
I'm sure that's the case. Now, at present, what in the way of release is going on inside? How soon do you think we're going to be able to know who this man is?
Well, the information would have to come from Captain Fritz's office.
Now, Captain Fritz came out of this door just a few steps ahead of Oswald. Do you know where he is at present?
No, sir, I don't.
Right.
Can you give us some indication of why these security precautions had been taken? Were there some threatening phone calls during the night that there might be some effort to take
I
Oswald's
couldn't answer
life?
that. I don't know.
Had you heard that?
This is merely a precautionary measure. The case as it is, it was felt that there had to be a security for him.
There were extreme precautions regarding the armored car.
Yes, sir.
Now, how, officer, would it be possible for someone to have slipped into this car over here with the elaborate security precautions that had
Sir,
been taken?
I can't answer. I do know the man. I would have known him on sight. If I'd seen him or noticed him, I would have ejected him. That's merely not because of him himself, but there was no one that was supposed to be in here but the press and the officers.
Now, what is it that you know about this man?
Sir, I wouldn't want to elaborate on my knowing.
Over the lunch break today, Ruby's lawyers Melvin Belli and Joe Tannehill walked down the block from the courthouse to the Texas School Book Depository building. There they visited the 6th floor and looked out the window where Lee Harvey Oswald was accused of firing the fatal shots. They also confirmed that the cell in which Ruby has been housed is not visible. The attorneys told reporters that they just wanted to look at history.
This afternoon, with those 18 witnesses called, the state rested. Melvin Belli stood and gave an opening statement on behalf of Ruby, and our very own Eric Bushman was in the court to listen. Here's part of Belli's opening remarks. I say this not in argument, but in fact, that the fates conspired against Jack Ruby, that he went right out here where the wreaths for the president were, and he went on up to the Western Union office, left his little dog Sheba in his car, and told her that he would be back. We'll show you the influences, the impulses on Jack Ruby's mind. We'll show you what happened to this tragic man, and we'll ask you to find him not guilty. Although we are not able to bring microphones in the courtroom for the opening statements or any of the questioning, we have it on good authority that we will be able to bring you the recordings of the closing arguments when they happen. More on that at the end of the trial.
Mr. Belli began Jack Ruby's defense by calling Karen Bennett. She's better known as Little Lynn, an exotic dancer for Jack Ruby. Appearing in a white dress and 9 months pregnant, she testified that Ruby was very upset after the assassination of the president and was in tears when he spoke to her. He refused to open his club the night after the assassination out of honor and respect for the fallen president. She also said that Ruby told her he may never open it again. Finally, she spoke to jurors of Ruby's intense affection for his 5 dachshunds. One in particular, Sheba, went everywhere, according to Ms. Bennett. This is the same Sheba the Dallas police found in Ruby's car. It was Ms. Bennett who was to receive the money from Jack Ruby, and that's the reason he went to the Western Union store. A Southwestern Bell employee was next called to prove that a phone call between Ruby and Little Lynn happened at 10:18 a.m. The call was unplanned, and therefore, according to the emerging defensive theory, so was Ruby's plan to come downtown the day he killed Oswald.
The next 2 defense witnesses both knew Jack Ruby and told jurors about him. Both characterized Ruby as emotional, unstable, quick-tempered, attention-seeking, and unpredictable. They both also said he was extraordinarily fond of his dogs. Ruby referred to his dogs as his children. As a matter of fact, Ruby would not allow anyone to refer to them as dogs. They were to be called his children. One witness testified that Ruby let one of the dogs lick blood off of his hand one time. After these witnesses all finished their testimony, court shut down for the evening and for the week. Testimony in the defense's case will resume Monday.
All the action wasn't just in the courtroom, and what must be the most well-photographed and witnessed jailbreak in the world happened today at 3:30. 7 prisoners broke out of the Dallas County Jail, took a hostage, and escaped. And all of it happened during Jack Ruby's trial. Using razor blades and a fake pistol fashioned out of a bar of soap, the prisoners burst out of the locked door leading to the jail elevator and scattered among the crowd gathered to watch the Ruby trial. All of the prisoners were either convicted of or awaiting trial for aggravated robbery. Charles Gregory, 20 years old, was identified as the man holding the pistol, and as the man who grabbed a woman hostage named Mrs. Ruth Thornton. He was captured moments later by Deputy Sheriff Charles Player. As of right now, 4 of the 7 have been captured. The 3 that remain at large are Billy Brock, Randolph Hutnell, and Leonard Driggers. Brandon, you have more details about how this escape all began.
That's right. According to Sheriff Bill Decker, the 7 men overtook a jailer named A.S. Greer as he worked distributing bars of soap next to the jail elevator. Using the guards as hostages, they then beat jailer Leroy Hunt and took his keys. That allowed them to escape into the public areas. The group charged into the office of Judge Meade and threw a chair through the window, apparently planning to get out of the building through the window that faced Elm Street. Once they realized that Elm Street was 2 floors up and not street level, they grabbed Miss Thornton, the sister-in-law of the late Mayor R.L. Thornton, and started out the front of the courthouse. Along the way, they came into contact with Melvin Belli's wife and what would turn out to be Jack Ruby's first witness, Little Lynn, an investigator with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office named Harold Carr, and Dallas Police Sergeant Dean, the same man who just finished testifying that morning, overpowered one of the escapees named Johnny Jenkins. They couldn't have done it without CBS reporter Leon Davis, a small-built newsman covering the Ruby trial. Upon hearing the commotion as Jenkins moved through the crowd, this reporter came face to face with the escapee. Davis said, "He tried to push me aside, but I grabbed him. I'm just glad the officers got there when they did." Meanwhile, Mrs. Thornton and her captor were apprehended in a parking lot at Elm Street and Record Street by Deputy Sheriff Player, who also collected the fake gun. The prisoners fashioned the gun out of soap, wax, a scrap of metal, and rolled paper for a barrel. Syrup had been used to glue the pieces all together.
Dallas County Sheriff Bill Decker said it couldn't have happened at a worse time, right in the middle of the Ruby trial, when I've got the international press here. The sheriff personally took the blame for the break and what he termed, even as the immense pressure from the eyes of the world focused on him. And speaking to reporters, he said, "Well, boys, a New York paper has just hit the streets with a banner headline, 'Oh, Dallas, oh, Dallas.'" Decker said they would soon have the other 3, adding, with the 1,700 deputies and policemen looking for them, and they're going to call for the help of the FBI. Tomorrow the weekend begins, so obviously court won't be in session. However, we will bring you historic audio for context. Jack Ruby's shooting of Lee Harvey Oswald and District Attorney Henry Wade's comments on Ruby immediately following. I'm Eric Bushman.
And I'm Brandon Birmingham. This is the state of Texas versus Jack Ruby, the original trial of the century. The transcript of the trial for Jack Ruby is publicly available online from the Texas State Library and Archives Commission, the Texas Digital Archive, and the Court of Criminal Appeals Centralized Court Case Files collection. From the online news bank and the Dallas Morning News, I use the following articles. Sergeant says Ruby indicated slaying plotted for 2 days. That was written on the 7th of March on page 6. Don Millsap wrote, 7 break out of county jail creating havoc outside Ruby trial courtroom. That was also published on the 7th. That was on page 1. John Rutledge wrote, world's press on hand as prisoners bolt jail. That was March 7th on page 9. Also, staff writers for the Dallas Morning News wrote, woman deputy was first to realize jailbreak on. That was on page 9. 2 other articles were written by the Dallas Morning News staff writers. The first, Defense Lawyers Look at History. Reporter got in on action. That was published on March the 7th on page 9. Carl Freund and Hugh Ainsworth wrote, State rests case against Jack Ruby. Dallas Morning News, March the 7th on page 1. And from the Dallas Times-Herald, available on location at the 6th floor museum at Dealey Plaza, donated by former Dallas Times-Herald reporter Bob Finley, Defense Lawyers Look at History. That was on page 12 on March 6th. Ruby Mold slaying earlier, officer says. That was also March 6th. Ruby actions after shooting related by witnesses. And Belli tries to break habit, all of which were published on March 6th, 1964.